All right, once again, Sierra Leone is painting a negative image for itself as the nation gets to the 2023 multi-tier elections. The country's delegation to the Ecowas Parliament presented the state of the country's report to the Parliament. Members of the Ecowas Parliament from other countries made submissions about political instability and the implications of changing the electoral laws 1 year ahead to the 2023 multi-tier elections. The Parliament made a proposal to send in a delegation to the country in a bid to avoid a degeneration of the country's peace. This is happening at a time when opposition members of Parliament have been suspended for violent eruptions in the well of Sierra Leone's Parliament. And those members of Parliament are said to be in hiding. Tonight, we are looking at the 2023 multi-tier elections and the implications of the proposed proportional representation electoral system for the 2023 June 24th elections. My name is Samuel Weisbango, and this is AYV on Sunday. Right, good evening and a very warm welcome to AYV on Sunday here on AYV Television on Channel 33 and DSTV Channel 399, on Radio FM 101.7 and on our www.ayvnews.com. You can also follow us on all our different social media handles, but be sure to be part of the conversation. Drop your comments and questions, just tailor them to the issues being raised here tonight. Do so on the AYV News Facebook page. We'll find time to go through some of them. As always, we'll bring people who are in touch with the issues here. And tonight, I have the pleasure of having Abdul Fatoma, who is the Chief Executive for Campaign for Human Rights and Development International. Abdul, good evening and welcome to AYV Sunday.
Good evening, Samuel, and thanks for having me.
Right, I have lawyer Lansana Dumbuya from the All People's Congress Party. Good evening and welcome to the show, lawyer Dumbuya.
Good evening, Samuel. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, well, with the arrival of the country's Deputy Minister of Information, Solomon Jamiru, who said he is running late. And lawyer Ibrahim Tomi, who just called in and called off his representation because he said he has an emergency. But let's get to the issues. Just before we take the precautionary remarks of the guests here tonight, let's go back to the ECOWAS Parliament in Abuja, where members of the Parliament made submissions following the presentation of the country's states, of the country's current state of affairs. So let's join Honorable Veronica Kadisise, who presented the report on behalf of the Sierra Leone delegation there.
The Electoral Commission of Sierra Leone has announced that it has not got enough time to use the 2021 midterm census figures to delineate ward and constituency boundaries. The Chief Electoral Commissioner, Mr. Mohamed Kone, announced that the June 24, 2023 general elections will be based on the district block proportional representation system, though the opposition has rejected the PR system, maintaining that the condition under which the PR system can be declared does not exist. In the district block system, the election will be contested in 16 electoral districts by the political parties and independent candidates for the block or number of seats in parliament allocated to the district. The district block system was last used for the 2002 parliamentary elections. The elections has indicated that political parties and independent candidates are expected to meet the threshold of 11.9% to win a seat in the next parliament if the electoral regulations that will govern the conduct of the 2023 elections are approved by Parliament. The regulations on the district block representation system and the local government proportional representation system were laid in Parliament on the 23rd November 2022. The main opposition, All People's Congress, APC, who had registered its opposition to the proportional representation system, were accused of disrupting the proceeding, during which violence erupted and the police were called to restore decorum in the well of Parliament. Pursuant to Section 170, subsection 7 of the 1991 Constitution, the regulation shall come into force after the expiration of 21 days or until annulled by 2/3 of votes cast by members of parliament.
All right, that was Honorable Veronica Kadisise, who presented the country's State of Affairs report at the Ecowas Parliament in Abuja. Let me hear from you, Abdul. I'm sure you were there when the report was presented in the Ecowas Parliament. First off, what does it bring to Sierra Leone as a nation and to Sierra Leoneans as a people, in the sense that this report was presented after the National Parliament was, turned into a wrestling well, with some members of Parliament fighting and behaving dishonorably, in the words of many. So going with this report to the regional parliaments, what does it bring to the country?
Should I say it was coincident or an event that we are obliged, the fact that we are part of the committee, the ECOWAS committee, and countries have to present their country's situational report. And on that Saturday, and that was last week Saturday, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Ghana were supposed to present their country's report. And unfortunately, Ghana withdrew, and so it was Sierra Leone and Liberia. And Liberia was the first country to present their own situational report, so that the community members at the ECOWAS Parliament, as per their mandate, can dialogue, deliberate, reach to consensus, and then also inform the authorities of heads of state, because that is where the ECOWAS Parliament recommendations end. And these are the things that we need to look into very keenly. So immediately after Liberia, they called on Sierra Leone, and then the speaker, Sidi Tunis, stepped aside and with the excuse that because he's part of the Sierra Leonean delegation and he will not be at the helm of it. So he's stepping down to go down to join the other members of parliament, the ECOWAS Parliament. And then the MP from Moyamba district, Veronica Sise, and then she came up and she gave that report. And the interesting thing there is that both Sierra Leone and Liberia were sharing similar concern when the report was presented about the political instability in the two countries. But then the MPs from Nigeria, Liberia, abandoning their own report and then jumping on Sierra Leone and expressing a grave concern about the last incident in our country parliament. That, these are not the things that really they think ECOWAS needs to tolerate, because ECOWAS for far too long has been encouraging a lot of instability and downplaying those instability, and when the situation get worse, and then they assemble themselves to say they want to visit those countries. And so the member of parliament from Nigeria, he was more emphasizing that it is high time, listening to that report and listening also from outside of the report what is happening in Sierra Leone, that the ECOWAS Community Parliament needs to pay the visit to Sierra Leone and actually get a clear understanding what is going on, emphasizing that they have downplayed the issue in Guinea, they have downplayed the issue in Burkina Faso, they have downplayed the issue in Mali, and several reports are also coming for the Gambia, and a lot of downplay, on those issues are going on, and also, Nigeria itself. So then, out of their 7 mandates as a community parliament, is to promote peace, security, and stability within the ECOWAS community. So how effective ECOWAS has been, in actually responding to early warning signs. But what we are seeing at the ECOWAS Parliament is the same thing reflecting in our local parliament across this community. Here is the ECOWAS Parliament. Their last decision stopped at the heads of state level for any further implementation. So how? I mean, it comes with conflict of interest in most ways, because currently we have President Bio as the head of state for Sierra Leone, and you take matters to, the authorities of heads of state against Sierra Leone, and the authorities needs to decide what needs to be done in favor of Sierra Leone, based on his friendship or whatever alliance he has built within the ECOWAS heads of state and authority. Much will not be, against his favor. So that has happened in other countries. So yeah. I think we need to push away as a committee for ECOWAS Parliament to be an independent body, because we're having a mix of...
Abdul, just before we get into the potency of the community parliament itself and whether or not it's fit for purpose at this moment, I'm aware, and majority of Sierra Leoneans are aware, that the head of Sierra Leone's delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament is the parliamentary leader of the opposition, APC, Cheno Ramadan Majuba. So what happened that the report was presented by Honorable Veronica Kadisise in that parliament?
I don't know the background situation of that, but I was in Abuja on Friday and he left on Friday. And Saturday, this report was presented. And the ironic thing again, the Liberian head of delegation was there. And we left on Sunday. We were supposed to left on Sunday, but then I missed my flight. Then I was back in Sierra Leone on Monday. Coincidentally, I was having another mission in Abuja. Then I was invited by the Sierra Leonean delegation that, Sierra Leone is presenting their report, as a human rights person, I needs to be around. But listening to the report itself, and then the comment from members of the ECOWAS Parliament, much needs to be done in terms of presenting our situation. Much was not in that report that actually reflect the reality on the ground.
Because I was just going to ask, with the content of the report, what was presented? Are the things presented in the parliament in line with really what is happening on ground?
Not really. Not really. Not really. So the highlight there was only the political side of things, but you look at the socio-economic factor, in this country was not, and the other challenges that we are having as, a member of the ECOWAS community. So we as an ECOWAS citizens, we have a lot of barriers, and the government is aware about that. So if they're presenting a report, these are reports that needs to reflect the goodwill and interest of the people of this country.
So the report was just a facade, avoiding, the reality. Let me bring in Lawyer Dumbuya in. Lawyer Dumbuya, you've listened to the presentation done by Honorable Veronica Kadisise and the submission from Abdul Fatoma, who was present during the presentation of the country's situational report. Now, first off, just generally, with what was presented and the fact that the head of that delegation comes from your party, but left early. Well, I don't know what happened. Abdul was there. He didn't know either what really transpired. He left on a Friday and the report was presented on a Saturday. What does that speak to in terms of the state of Sierra Leone itself?
Mr. Wise, to be honest with you, it will be unfair if I make any comments about that, because I would have thought that Mr. Fatoma would have been in a position to be able to give us the specifics of what happened. Notwithstanding, I don't know what really operated at the point in time which necessitated the leader to have left, you know. But under normal circumstances, you know, I believe that whoever presented the report should have been able to give details of the report, you know. But I don't know, maybe there is more to go in that footage. But so far, it's like she just gave some kind of brief introduction. Not even brief. I should not put it like that. But just a word, and then presented the report. For me, listening to her, it's a mockery. It is really a mockery. All what was presented is a mockery to the people of this country.
Mockery in what sense?
Mockery in a sense that, for example, let us take, for example, when she was reading, she read a part where she said that the percentage which they are looking, the minimum percentage should be 11.2%. Who is going to have that? Except APC or SLPP. Not even NGC is not going to have 11%. So it means, as I said here the other day, no matter what kind of system that is trickled down to Sierra Leone in terms of electoral process, it will still boil down to the two-party system. So let us don't begin to beat around the bush to say we're bringing a PR system. And as I've said to you, the PR system is really not ripe for Sierra Leone. People do not understand what is the PR system. The PR system, yes, it's a kind of electoral system, but Sierra Leone is not ready for it, and you cannot bypass the Constitution at this point in time. Because if you look at Section 38 of the Constitution, it states that if you want to conduct a PR system, then the lifespan of Parliament, the lifespan of the constituencies must have elapsed. And that is between 5 to 7 years. Between 5 to 7 years. 7 years is going up to 2024. So actually, there is no basis for the PR system constitutionally. I don't know, as I've said many times, I don't know who is advising the president, and with the greatest respect to all those who are around him, but I think whoever is giving him this advice of a PR system is really not helping him, it's not helping the country, and it's not helping the democratic institutions, you know, built over the years by Sierra Leoneans and international partners.
Going back to the Ecowas Parliament, with what was presented by the Honorable Veronica Kadisise, the fact that the government did all it could within the confines of the law,
that's not true.
The constitutional provisions, Section 30, like you just mentioned, and then the opposition is fiercely just opposing, whilst the government is determined to go with the PR system. And so that's responsible for the stalemates that we even saw in Parliament. That's rancor, that's pandemonium amongst people who are considered to be honorable members behaving dishonorably in the House. And then we've seen how that has been taken to the community's court, parliament, sorry, and the parliament. We've had submissions from the members. I mean, classifying Sierra Leone as a state of that is suffering from political instability, and there is every proclivity that the country's peace might decline if something is not done. Abdul mentioned that. I mean, if this is left unabated, it might lead to something that all of us would not love to see.
Mr. Wise, you see. You've said it all, but you see the sincerity and honesty and forthrightness in citizens, well, irrespective of whichever political party you are, whether you are in the APC, SLPP, NGC. Sometimes you have to look at the development of the country. Now, you're talking about Honorable Veronica stating that they've complied with the law. That is completely untrue. It is not true. Section 38 talks about constituency elections, that the country is mandated to do constituency elections, and there is this amendment of 2001, which is 38A, which states that if there are no constituencies, existing at the point in time, then the president will advise the Electoral Commission, or vice versa, as the case may be, for there to be a PR system. But that is where there are no constituencies existing. And mind you, Samuel, the constitution is clear. It states that the lifespan of constituencies is between 5 and 7 years. And it is not yet 7 years. Why do you want to take the 5 years? Let me ask you a question, Samuel. If I owe you money and we go into an agreement, and I said, Sammy, I will pay you within 5 to 7 years. Can you come in 5 years and say, I want you to pay me? Yes, you can come, but you cannot say, I want you to pay me if I don't have the money. It has to be after 7 years. After 7 years, you can say, no, the 7 years was the maximum. So 7 years is the maximum in the Constitution. Why, for goodness sake, these retrogressive Sierra Leoneans are pushing the PR system? Why can't you wait after 7 years? After 7 years, if you push the PR system, maybe you have a point there. You can have a point there. And it will be very difficult for a man like me to argue, But you see, again, the reason for the drafters to say it should be between 5 and 7 years, it's not really for you to wait until 7 years. Between 5 and 7 years, you can delimit. Within 2 years, you are delimited. By the time it gets to 7 years, there would not be any need for a PR system. And by the way, people should understand that the PR system was promulgated. It came into effect because of a kind of an electoral arrangement, because there were no constituencies existing then in 1996 and 2001. And in 2001 the law was promulgated because the elections were going to be held in 2002. So if they had gone to the elections in 2002, it would have been problematic. That was the reason, because in 1996, well, it was just a kind of agreement, with all the parties and all the stakeholders. It was illegal then. But of course, you can be able to understand what operated then. But in 2002, there was no reason for them to have gone into 2002 with a PR system. That's why the law was promulgated in 2001. Right.
Abdul, when you submitted that what was presented in the Ecowas Parliament did not reflect the true picture on ground, for all I know, the country's situational report is always prepared by the delegation. And Sierra Leone's delegation is made up of the APC, SLPP, independent candidates, all of that. So, is there any knowledge as to how the report itself was first prepared before its presentation? That at the end of the day, you've monitored what is happening in Sierra Leone and you continue to monitor, and you're saying, no, that report did not meet the realities on ground.
Well, basically, in normal circumstances, like other regional parliaments, like the European Parliament, the delegations there do consultation at national level, and they have the provision of having researchers that will develop questionnaires and ask, randomly members of the public about their perception on things that are happening in that country. If they use that method, I'm not privy to that. But in democracy, as the ECOWAS Community Parliament aim to project itself, that it should be based on consultation and a true representation of the community members. And if we are working within that spirit, any country report should reflect the view of the citizens. And we have 5 slots, all country, and then beyond the 5 slots is based on population. So we cannot meet that demand to get the other slots. So we only have the 5 slots. So we have 2 from the APC, we have 2 from the SLPP, and then we have 2 from, 1 from the independent. And looking at that, on that fateful day, the leader of the delegation for Sierra Leone was not there. And I looked around, the APC member of parliament was there, but he was not in the room Why is the presentation Mali Spain? I met with him.
Mali Spain.
Yeah, and so then I saw the independent candidate. He was there, and he also raised his hand up to say something about both Sierra Leone report and Liberian report. But the Liberian report was not even presented by the leader of their delegation. It was one of their senior members, Massakoy, who presented that report. So, but basically, locally again, what we lack is the true consultation. You know, how do we consult, people in this country that we represent, their views? You know, what do we want to be reflected in those reports? You have several Sierra Leoneans who have been harassed at different ECOWAS border points. I mean, these are concerns. If we have a free movement within the ECOWAS treaty, I mean, it should reflect in all countries within the ECOWAS. But if we, as ECOWAS members, we are not enjoying that, then also you look at the economic hardship. Globally, politicians, African politicians will blame the Ukraine-Russian war and also blame the COVID situation. Yes, but then other countries are stepping forward looking for solutions. So if we are also presenting a report, we should not be ashamed of highlighting the economic and the unemployment challenges that are facing our people, which pose huge national security threats. So by a way of working together as a community members of state, maybe this will encourage the African heads of state to look at how best they will engage their donor partners to actually help to address this issue of joblessness within the community. But if you are shying away, highlighting some of your major problems that threatening your country's stability, then definitely this issue will keep knocking on your door. And this is what exactly we have been enjoying across the ECOWAS community.
All right. Continue still with us, Abdul Fatoma, Lansan Adombia. Let me quickly welcome the country's Deputy Minister of Information, Solomon Jamiru. Solomon, good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's quickly go back. Abdul Fatoma just mentioned that Honorable Shaka Sama was there and he made a submission. He raised his hand for submission. And the Speaker granted him that opportunity to speak in the ECOWAS Parliament during the presentation of the country's situational report. Let's listen to Honorable Shaka Samai on his submission there on the PR system.
Well, in the district block system, Sierra Leone is divided into districts, into administrative districts. We have about 16 districts. Now, in the district block system, the district becomes like one constituency. The whole district is a constituency. Presently, each of us here is representing a constituency. But in the district block system, now people do not have to vote for individual candidates. Each party will present a list to the electoral body. The list is given in order of what? Priority. If, for example, 7 seats are given to a district, you have to present a list that has 2 times that number. Meaning, if you have 7 seats, you have to present a list of 14 names from number 1 to number 14. If, for example, the party wins 6 seats in the district, then number 1 to number 6 will be announced and the MPs. Now there's a threshold. NEC has stated in the regulation that a party or a candidate or a party, if you are an independent candidate, you can contest as an independent candidate. Besides that, you have the party list. Each independent candidate or political party has to secure 11.9% of the valid votes cast for you to win 1 seat. If you're an independent candidate, you have to win 11.9% of the valid vote cast, the total votes cast, for you to win a seat.
All right, that was the independent candidate, independent member of parliament, Shaka Sama, there as a member of the Sierra Leone delegation. Abdul has given us a clear path as to how the representation is. We have two members of the opposition All People's Congress Party, the Honorable Cherno Ramadan Majuba and Honorable Ajibola Manley Spain, and we also have the Honorable Veronica Kadisise and the Speaker of the Ecowas Parliament, Honorable Dr. Mohamed Sidi Tunis, and Shaka Sama is the independent candidate. So let me quickly get a precursory remark from you, Solomon, with regards the state of country's report that was presented in the Ecowas Parliament in Abuja by Honorable Veronica Kadisise on the proportional representation system, and that has sparked a lot of debate across corridors. First of all, what does the government make of that?
Well, first, I think it is important for us to establish that this is a sovereign nation, but Sierra Leone is also a member of ECOWAS, and so it is important that every member state of ECOWAS should be seen ascribing and lending a very serious sense of honor, respect for all the organs of ECOWAS. I think it is important for us to establish that, whether it's ECOWAS Parliament or the community courts or at the level of heads of state or council of ministers, it's very important. And we are all aware that the ECOWAS Parliament, since its establishment in 1993, by the ECOWAS revised treaty of Articles 6 and 13, it has evolved over time, whether in functionality or utility. And so it's not uncommon for parliamentarians to speak, regarding events in countries, just the same way as ambassadors sent to ECOWAS nations, Council of Ministers, heads of state will speak. But it is also important to underscore that when you are serving there, when you're a member of parliament and you sit in the ECOWAS court, you have to be careful not to be out of order in the things that you say. One, what you say should be anchored on a significant level of knowledge and appreciation of the facts and circumstances on the ground. Secondly, you have to have knowledge of the country's specific legal regime. And thirdly, if you're not well guarded in the things that you say, you may run the risk of jeopardizing the sovereignty of nations. So it is important to underscore that. And I think when I listened to, for example, what was put into social media, my first instinct has been, this is just an opposition stunt, well orchestrated to skew public opinion towards a certain angle. And when you delve deep, it's important for all of us to know whether it's Guinea or Liberia or Nigeria or Ghana or Sierra Leone, we all have laws. And this is a constitutional issue. The issue about a list system, a district block proportional representation system, was not the orchestration of anybody. It's something that has basis in the laws of Sierra Leone. It's something that's provided for in the Constitution of Sierra Leone as amended by Section 38A of the Constitution of Sierra Leone Amendment Act of 2001. So it's not anything that was concocted from the air. And if parliamentarians, other stakeholders, had ever thought that having a proportional representation system is redundant, that is something that would have been expunged from our law books ever.
Can I,
it's provided for
just
in the law.
Just out of curiosity, Solomon, Lawyer Dumbuya submitted earlier that Section 38 itself has been breached by the introduction of the district block system as announced by the Electoral Commission Sierra Leone. And so the question is, what provision is the fundamental law that speaks to elections generally in Sierra Leone, whether or not that fundamental regime addresses the issue of proportional representation?
So first we have the first, and I think again it's important for members of the public to I am a lawyer, and I have the greatest respect for my senior. But when it's a constitutional issue, and especially now that it's, some quarters are waiting for some pronouncement from the Supreme Court of Sierra Leone, sometimes I say the less said, the better. But I think it's important, out of courtesy for the question, The ground norm for Sierra Leone is the Constitution of Sierra Leone, Act number 6 of 1991. And this constitution in section 38 has said elections will be conducted on the basis of constituencies. But then in anticipation, the same section 38 was amended. And the amendment by section 38A is still the law of Sierra Leone. It is still the law of Sierra Leone and valid for whatever purposes as long as there are justifiable circumstances. So if you are holding elections on the basis of constituencies as provided for in section 38 of the Constitution Act number 6 of 1991, that's the regime. But once the determination is made, and this now is the objective of the amendment. Once the determination is made that constituencies have not been defined or established for the purposes of, and in this case, the multi-tier elections for June 2023, then necessarily there would be recourse to section 38A. And the only time that provision was invoked was when consultation was made and it was established that constituencies are or will not be defined or established for the purpose of conducting the June 2023 elections. So for me, the analogy is, if a certain lady carrying a maiden name now gets married, you cannot compel the married lady to continue using the maiden name. So in this case, for me, as I said, it's a constitutional issue. It's give it, for whatever reason, that members of parliament for APC chose to go down the path, that's the route that they took in parliament, and for whatever reason why APC chose to walk out of parliament, by virtue of the provisions of, I think, section 171, subsection 7 or 8, the instrument was laid. It matured. Proceedings took place, discussions, debates, or whatnot, and it has been passed. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're looking at whether this has passed the test, one, it's a constitutional issue, and it is provided for in the Constitution of Sierra Leone as amended in the Constitution of Sierra Leone Amendment Act of 2001. So that's the first thing. So it was not something that was crafted from the air. People just sat somewhere and just brought something and imported it. It's in the law. That's one. Two, Section 33 of the Constitution of Sierra Leone gives the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone the power to conduct registration, do elections and referenda, and for the purpose of registration and the conduct of elections, NEC has the power to, via the vehicle of statutory instrument, make regulations. Those regulations were made and tabled in Parliament and have been passed. So anybody who is asking whether the litmus test has been done, the necessary parameters have been fulfilled, legally I would say yes.
So the contention in Parliament for the opposition members of Parliament is that the instrument that was laid should not have been a statutory instrument but a constitutional one, because what they were looking at has to do with the Constitution of Sierra Leone. So it should not just be amended statutorily, it has to be a constitutional amendment. So where do you stand on that?
Well, this constitution, which talks about this same constitution, which is the 1991 constitution, has given guidance through section 33. So if we have respect for the Constitution and we say the Constitution is the supreme law regime for Sierra Leone, and that Constitution has given a specific guidance by section 33, you would not go wrong by invoking the provision of that Constitution. And in this case, we are talking about not any other regulation. We are talking about regulations for elections. And the Constitution gives you the roadmap. What way do you have to go in terms of making those regulations? It's the same. It's not like a subsidiary legislation telling you what to do. It's the Constitution, the parent law, that is giving you an indication of what to do.
Lawyer Dumbuya, quickly, you know, earlier when you were making your submission, you mentioned that constituencies are still in place. You've listened to what Solomon has submitted, that for the purposes of the 2023 elections, constituencies have not been established. And where that is not in place, it is but necessary to go with the proportional representation system. So the government is saying constituencies have not been established for 2023 elections. And you are saying, no, we still have constituencies in place. So do you think the existing constituencies, can they return these members who currently represent those constituencies to Parliament come 2023?
Sure, it should happen. Let me say this with due respect to my colleague Jamilu. He's a fine gentleman, fine lawyer. I do not disagree with him as a person, but I disagree with his reasoning, which he has listed here just now. That the instrument was properly laid before Parliament. It's a constitutional issue. Sometimes you see, you do not even need a lawyer when it comes to certain aspects of the Constitution. When it is black and white, you don't even need a lawyer to begin to teach you, or a judge to teach you or tell you that this is what the Constitution is saying. When it comes to the life of the constituency, and I want Mr. Jamiu to pay keen attention to this, Section 38 is the primary legislation. 38A is the proviso. It's a proviso where there are no existing constituencies, then, there and then, you resort to 38A. So we are not, let's not go to 38A. We must not look at it until we are not able to fulfill the criteria of Section 38 itself.
Which is the establishment of constituencies.
Yes, the establishment of constituencies. And it states that the lifespan of constituencies, Mr. Jamiu, is between 5 and 7 years. That is what 38 says. The lifespan of constituencies is between 5 and 7 years. It is not yet 7 years. 7 years is 2024.
But it's 5 years in place.
5 years is this December, end of this December. Even you see, the thing is, the lifespan says between 5 to 7. It did not come below, say 4, because it wants to give a kind of period. 5 to 7. As long as it is not yet 7 years, constituencies are still in place. He knows that. And everybody, even a layman in the street knows that when they say, if I say I give you a contract, or maybe we sign a contract, you should pay me within 5 and 7 years. After 7 years, you can come and take me to court. But if it is not yet 7 years, you say just 5 years, the court would ask you to go out. Say no, the contract says between 5 to 7 years. So, you know, sometimes, as I've said earlier on, for me, I so much love Sierra Leone than any other thing that you can think of. Before I became a member of a political party, I was born a Sierra Leonean first. And we must always ensure that Sierra Leone comes first. Sometimes it is difficult. It's difficult when you are in a certain situation. Sometimes, you know, it's difficult. But for me, I know the way, what I do, so that when I go out, because as a senior lawyer, I want, when I say something on the law, when you go to The Hague, you go anywhere in the world, I want somebody to say, yes, the man is right on point. If I don't want to make a comment, I will not make a comment. But to be honest with you, the move by the SLPP to come with a proportional representation just on the eve of election, and it is not yet 7 years. I do not know, but it is outrightly long. It's wrong. It's an affront to the people of this country. And to me, it seems like they want to destroy the democratic institutions built by Sierra Leoneans and the international partners. We must not take these things lightly, irrespective of whatever side you are. It is not, the clear point is, it is not yet 7 years. The Constitution says between 5 to 7 years.
So you still hold it's a clear violation of the Constitution?
It is a clear violation. That thing should not even go to Parliament. It should not even be debated by the members of Parliament, because it is not yet 7 years. Those who took it to Parliament ought not to have done so. If they love this country, they ought not to have done so.
What does your party make of what is really happening around that? I mean, the party has vehemently refused to comment on these issues because they've taken, they've gone to the country's apex court looking for interpretation of the Constitution, and to a point that they did not participate in Parliament when even a motion was moved for the annulment of the thing. And of course, that did not meet. So, like Solomon said, it's been the regulations. I mean, they've been passed into law already. So
it is still unconstitutional. As I have said, the Constitution states between 5 to 7 years. It is not yet 7 years. 7 years ends in 2024. So whatever is being done by Parliament is unconstitutional.
do you not consider the minimum requirement here? Are you only just considering the maximum time frame of 7 years?
No, the maximum time is the penultimate. And let me say this to you. You know, the drafters of the Constitution were wise. The reason that they've stated between 5 to 7 years is for whichever administration will be there to make the necessary arrangement for constituencies to be delimited within the 2 years. That is the reason. That's why they did not go below 5. They said between 5 to 7 years. So when it is 5, you know that it is getting to 7. Then you begin to make arrangement for delimitation. You see, that is the reason behind the drafting of that particular provision. It's not because the drafters did not foresee what was going to happen. They knew that the delimitation will take some time. So you needed some time. And when you are delimiting constituencies, it's not something you do in a wishy-washy manner. You have to be very, very thorough and very, very careful how you do it. And people also like to link the census to the limitation of constituencies. The census has nothing to do with the limitation of constituencies. Of course, it can help them, you know, if they need certain information. Census is for, for development, you know, making provisions for people, how many people are there, how can we do this, what amount of, you know, beds can we provide in the hospital, what amount of schools, you know, to be built and all the rest of it. It's not for, that is why.
Where would the figures to determine constituencies come from?
That is why the Electoral Commissioner also does its own registration process for elections. That is the people who will go to vote. It has nothing to do with the census, because the voting, you have voting age. And also, when they would have done the census, many people would have died after the census, and some may have traveled out of the jurisdiction. And, you know, some people may not be interested in voting. Some people are like that. You know, so that is why they will do the voters registration. During the voters registration, that is why, for me, I don't know. We should have a process where the voters process should not take within 2 weeks or 3 weeks as it's been done now. It should be over a complete year. When you have the time, you go to the registration process. They do it, in fact, it becomes more credible, you know, and more thorough. Because when you go, they do the screening and do everything, and then you do your registration, you come home. Between a period of 1 year, they've been able to register everybody. You don't rush people into registration centers within 3 weeks. And also, again, after the registration process, I noticed, okay, let's forget about the anomalies. We've spoken about them here, anomalies and all the limitations which happen. Now, when the provisional lists were posted out, I noticed that 5 days were given for people to go and, you know, verify. Yeah. That was also unconstitutional. Many people do not know. It ought to have been 14 days, not 5 days. It is constitutional also. It is the law, the not constitutional. It is the Public Elections Act of 2020 and also 2012. How can the Electoral Commissioner be just going against the law, breaching the law, all the way you are breaching the law in electoral? It gets to a point where nobody trusts you anymore, because it says 14 days. That is when people go and verify the provisional list. You put it out for 5 days.
All right.
And he knows what I'm saying.
Let me quickly bring in Abdul. You know, the fierce opposition of the PR system by the opposition APC, and that's a strong sense of conviction from the government to implement the PR system. Where, in the midst of that, where is Sierra Leone's 2023 elections headed in terms of credibility, in terms of fairness, transparency, but most importantly, the peaceful nature of the process?
Well, you know, we always create a situation of our elections before the elections. You know, elections after elections, we keep saying that. You know, we're going to lose a lot of lives and properties, and so many people will even travel ahead of the elections. Fear of, you know, several things for security reasons and so on and so forth. Coming back to the PR and listening to both Jamiru and Dumbuya, taken from Dumbuya, if you go to 38.3, you know,
Yes,
it says clearly about the population quotation, right? If NEC wants to divide based on constituency, 38.3 talks about the quotation of the population and size, so it should be equal. So statistics is not only vital for policy implementation issues, it also gives a basis to the National Electoral Commission to the Electoral Commission to actually determine, you know, what population size make up to a constituency. And now the dilemma we have here, I mean, he's arguing his point on the 7 years basis. And then we are under constitutional mandate as well, that every 5 years we should organize general elections, and our members of parliament should return back, you know, to parliament after 5 years. When they have elected, they serve 5-year term. The president also served 5-year term. It was only the local council that was having, you know, 4-year, you know, term of office. And if we if we go back, but now it has been extended based on the amendment. You know, they are also running 5-year term of office. And now if we go to that strictly, so basically we ignore the 5-year, as you know, he was, you know, arguing his point. And then the 7-year we elapse at the middle of, you know, the second year or the first year of the new parliament, running the old. Then immediately after 2024, we will be having an expired constituency. But still, we have our elected members that are mandated to run for 5 years. So just within a 1 year of their term, they're running, you know, an expired constituency. If we are to go strictly by the 7 year, because it elapsed in the 7 year, right? Within 5 to 7. And then immediately we get to that 7, 2024, 2023, they will be celebrating their first year in parliament. Then after that, they do, I mean, the very constituency they enter through in, it has already elapsed. So what do we do? So now, what needed to be done was this: a proper national consultation. We have found ourselves in a catchy situation, and with this dicey situation, we have a backup plan. A backup plan is the 38A, which says if we cannot have a constituency, we can resort to this. And these are the periods that we'll be running towards to. And these are the situations. Either we postpone our election to 2024, or we're going to the election, then their first term of office expire in the 7 year. So what happens, you know, based on those constituencies? And we have a reserve, which is the backup plan. But that backup plan, earlier on he said, Sierra Leoneans are not prepared to it. I agree with him to a certain extent. Mentally, we should have been informed 12 months or 16 months ahead.
12 months is
that, you know, that we'll be switching from constituency base to now PR system. A massive education. But up till now, we don't have any education, intensive education on the PR system. What we have is intensive defense system for the PR system and intensive disagreement with the PR system without educating the masses. You know, how this will help our democracy, either to grow or to break our democracy. So we have not spent much time on that as a nation. All what we have been doing is to defend or to disagree without giving us much stronger, you know, reason why. So basically what needs to be done is for us as a country to engage ourselves at the moment, we are in a very critical situation, right? Using the 2021, the midterm census is already challenging. There is a mixed situation here. The very donors work out of it. The opposition have problem with it. 2015, donors work out of it. Opposition having problem. So we keep saying that the populations we have in our district, in our constituents, does not actually reflect to the reality. So what do we need within 2023 onwards? How can we actually produce a data, if not 100% accurate, but to some point 80%, 85% accurate, that reflect the Sierra Leonean picture? And we move with that for developmental purpose, for our governance issues, and so on and so forth. But our politicians have failed to create that platform for us to sit and discuss and forge the way forward. The best they have offered us is to defend or to disagree.
How urgent is this engagement needed, the engagement you're talking about, the dialogue that we should have as a people, as a country, for us to understand better our political situation? How urgent is that engagement?
It's very urgent. I mean, we need that, you know, even now, tomorrow, next month. We need that ahead of June. We need that ahead of May. We need that ahead of April. You know, entering into the new year, these are the kind of engagement that this country needs. I mean, we are in a very serious situation, but the authorities in this country are downplaying it. I mean, the opposition have their own followers. Don't take that away from them. They have their own followers. We saw what happened with the census. We saw what happened during the registration. When they came out and asked their people to come out to register, you saw the response. When they said to the people not to come out for the census, we saw what happened. And the results are very clear. And heading to 2023 June election, what we need is a dialogue. It's not, I mean, we don't need to take the opportunity to take every Sierra Leonean for granted. We need to treat every Sierra Leonean as important, as very serious, you know, member of state affairs, and we need their voices.
Okay, let's go back to the Ecowas Parliament and listen to submissions made by other members of the Parliament from other countries, and then we'll be back to for studio after this clip.
Well, in the district block system, Sierra Leone is divided into districts. Well, in the district block system,
Sierra Leone report is beautiful, but we also hear, it's stated here that there's a major dispute as to representation and how the election will be done. It's obvious. If you speak with one Sierra Leone delegate or two, they will tell you that the political situation they are going towards the election is unstable. There's no need for we to hide anything from each other here. If we in Nigeria discover that there will be no free or fair election, of course we say it out. Because if we say it out, and Ecowas intervenes, it's helping us. But if we know that there's something that could create problem in the country, and then we come here and sit down and say there's nothing, and something happens, we have lost two countries.
A situation where police are entering parliament to make sure that there is a decorum in parliament means that that country political situation is not stable.
I think there's a grave situation, and this parliament must send a fact-finding mission to Sierra Leone to investigate this major violation. It's not the first time, it's not the second time, it's the third time. The second issue in Sierra Leone is that less than a year to election, Sierra Leone is still trying to change the electoral law. They're still trying to change the election law to work in the favor of the ruling establishment. I think it's quite alarming, and maybe the Sierra Leone delegation need to speak to this again.
On the issue of the election law, the head of delegation, Snow, mentioned this, that 1 year to the election, you are trying to change the election law. It's not just the law, it's changing the system, where the law obviously affects the system. Now the system is trying to bring into place a proportional representation. But Chair, for the short of my political life, proportional representation is done where there are no defined electoral boundaries. And the law of the delegation of Sierra Leone can bear me out of this. If whatever their law say, I will be willing to listen to them. How do you want to move to a proportional representation when there are clearly defined political boundaries, when there are clearly established political constituencies, but yet you want to move to proportional representation as though there are no laws and order? The last time I remember there was proportional representation in Sierra Leone was when the war had just ended. There were no systems, there were no laws. I think they did that. Similar thing happened in Liberia, but after recovery now, after all these years, how come you want to move to proportional representation when there are clearly defined political constituencies?
All right, those were submissions from members of the Ecowas Parliament. Just so we are able to put things into context here, the Speaker of the Ecowas Parliament, Honorable Mohamed Sidi Tunis, responded after stepping down as Speaker and becoming a member of the delegation, responded to some of these concerns that were raised. Let's listen to his response to the concerns raised by other members of the Parliament.
That Sierra Leone, 1 year into elections, was still trying to change laws, electoral laws. This is not correct. This is a complete misrepresentation. The district block system that we are talking about is in our laws. They say where, under any law for the time being in force, a date for a general election of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies here have not been established in accordance with subsection 3 of section 38 of the purposes. Such elections, the president may, after consultation with the Electoral Commission, direct that such election shall be conducted on a basis of the existing districts in a manner to be known as a district block representation system instead of constituency. National representation system of elections. We already have it here in our constitution. It's not a new law. Honorable members have to understand that. Any country going into elections, whether it is a first world country or it is a third world country, there must be some tensions because of politics. Because people are fighting for power. The problem we have in Sierra Leone is not inter-party politics. It is the intra-party politics. The problem is that the main opposition party is in a very serious problem. They are in and out of court every day. They are fighting each other every day. And government has nothing absolutely to do with that. I can assure you. Have nothing absolutely to do with that. Honorable Senator Snow and Honorable Clarence Massacoy, they know very well what I'm talking about, Madam Speaker. They know. The main opposition party is a very serious situation, even for us in Ecowas. I have had meetings as Speaker of Ecowas Parliament with key players in the opposition, just so that I will be able to bring peace in that political party. That is the major problem we have in Sierra Leone, not between government or the opposition party. The kind of political tolerance that we have in Sierra Leone, trust me, we don't have it in most countries, because I would not say anywhere else. Sierra Leone is the only country, as I speak to you, Madam Speaker and honorable members, we do not have any political detainees. None. Zero.
All right, that was Honorable Sidi Mohamed Tunis. Solomon, let me hear your submission based on what was submitted by the members of parliament and the response of the Speaker of Ecowas Parliament on the PI system and the picture that has been painted about Sierra Leone being, there's this major dispute over the PI system, there's political instability, there's the need for a delegation to be sent to Sierra Leone and all of that.
So as I said, again, I would reiterate that I personally have respect for all organs of ECOWAS, and I encourage Sierra Leoneans, all of us, to pay that courtesy to the organs. But clearly, I have a sense that some of those delegates were clearly speaking in error, not anchored on any appreciable knowledge of our facts and also our legal instruments. But at the end of the day, if you listen, the second Liberian delegate said he's willing to be educated on what the legal provisions are. And I'm sure that education was provided by Speaker Sidi Tunis and others. So again, they thought that perhaps the government was trying to change the law. They never knew that it was already in the Constitution as amended until that fact was brought out to them. So I hope that with that clarity, that should fundamentally change their position now, because otherwise you will be proceeding on an erroneous assumption and conveying an impression about Sierra Leone when, of course, that is not the case. And secondly, Samuel, my learned senior raised the point that when you talk about delimiting constituencies, it has nothing to do with census. Can you just, so I have...
I said it can inform, of course, but there are two different things. It can inform the electoral process, but there are two different things. And the electoral system, the commissioner for NEC can operate without that particular information, if he wants to, because he does his own registration.
So if we were doing constituency-based elections under Section 38 of the Constitution, the fact is that, as he rightly pointed out, you review constituencies at intervals not less than 5 and not more than 7. But the same Constitution gives a proviso that the Commission may at any time, the proviso to subsection 4 of Section 38. You can review and alter boundaries, and it ends up by saying, by reason of the conduct of the census of the population. The same Constitution. So it's important for us to make full and frank disclosures of what the law is, and not just stick to not less than 5 or not more than 7. Because the Constitution envisages situations where it is like statutory audits. You say, okay, every 12 months. But then government or the president sees the need where a special audit is necessary. It's like when you say you conduct census, okay, you say every 10 years. But the same law gives the power to do a midterm census. So these things are not cast in black and white. The drafters of the Constitution, they gave the ideal situation, but they also envisaged that there may be moments, justifiable circumstances that may warrant, accommodating some. And I think that is what is happening in this situation. There is a Section 38 in the Constitution of Sierra Leone, but the same drafters envisaged that there may be a situation where constituencies, and again, let me say this, when the Constitution talks about reviewing boundaries, it is not talking about reviewing boundaries for the purposes of past elections. What we are looking at is the multi-tier elections for June 2023.
Of course.
So it's important for these facts to be brought out, that you have ideal situations, but you also have excusable or justifiable circumstances that would warrant. But whether it's Section 38 for constituency-based or Section 38A for proportional representation, both are anchored on the Constitution and also as amended in the Constitution of Sierra Leone Amendment Act. So unlike what delegates were saying, I think that's forgiven. They made reprehensible remarks for me. And I think sitting there, You should be well guarded when you're speaking to the sovereignty of nations. But I think now that they are educated, it should fundamentally shift their position, and we expect them to do the honorable thing.
Let me ask this question. The introduction of the district block system, does it, at this point, looking at things happening, does it threaten the political stability of the state, especially as we head to the 2023 multi-tier elections?
First, I think it's important for me to pay tribute to what my friend Abdul Fatoma was saying. This is a democracy. And it is important at every given moment of our democracy for one, to deepen peace, continue dialogue. Anything that has happened or is happening does not close any doors to engagements. Political dialogue continues for the entire life of any government. And even if it were APC that was in governance, political dialogue, engagement, consultations will continue. It's never closed. That's one. Two, we recognize that choosing an electoral system is one of the most important institutional decisions any democracy can make. Now, whether this would disturb the peace of Sierra Leone or distort the coherence, let's go back to some of the countries that are using the PR system. Samuel, Switzerland, as far back as 1918, and the reason they have presented is because of the dominance that how certain political parties entrenched themselves and closed the space to smaller parties. Switzerland, as far back as 1918. South Africa, when they were negotiating on the political settlement, a suitable political settlement, they chose the PR. And when they set up a commission headed by a guy called Frederick Slabat, the commission came back, and in fact, the minority membership of the commission were in favor of the PR, and some were in favor of a hybrid. When the report went to Parliament, the South African Parliament, and we all see the South African Parliament, some people will say it's chaotic, you know, with Malema and others. But when it went to Parliament, South Africa said, for us, we believe that the most appropriate system for the kind of democracy that we have is the proportional representation system. So when you look at countries that are saying, why do we think the PR system is relevant? They talk about it. So they talk about how in the majoritarian system, it's the first past the post. So if Samuel and Solomon are contesting, Samuel has 51% of the vote and Solomon has 49% of the vote. 49% is wasted. Samuel carries the day. But in the PR, 49% will have a sense. So for example, if I am permitted, just a minute.
Go ahead.
We have what we call the largest remainder formula. Now, let's say, for example, AYV district, because elections will be conducted on district. Let's say AYV district has 200,000 valid votes cast, and 20 seats are allocated to AYV district. It means on average, it's 10,000 votes per seat. Let's say Samuel's party has 105,000 votes. Solomon's party has 28,000 votes. Abdul's party has 46,000 votes. It means Samuel with 105,000 already. I will change that next time. It means Samuel with 105,000 votes has already secured 10 seats with a remainder of 5,000 in the bank. Samuel of Solomon with 28,000, it means I have secured 2 seats with 8,000 extra in the bank. Abdul with 46,000 means he has secured 4 seats with 6,000 in the bank. Now, it means it's 10, 4, and 2, 16 seats already with a remainder of 4 seats. Now, you go now to the remainder votes. Solomon had 28,000, so it means my remainder is 8,000 compared to your 5 and compared to Abdul's 6. Because I have the highest remainder, an additional seat is given to me. The next one is Fatoma, who will have an additional remainder seat before coming to Samuel. In the majoritarian first past the post, Solomon and Abdul are not considered. It is only Samuel. But in the PR system, based on the proportion of votes that we have, our voices matter. So countries like Switzerland, South Africa, and even the Bundestag in Germany, these countries have seen the relevance of the PR. So when you ask the question, how does it foster peace? How does it bring cohesion? How does it make sure that interest group political parties that may not do well in the majoritarian system would actually have their voice in a PR system? I think for me, it's relevant. It will solidify, you know, bringing us together, making sure that we have a fair but also diversity in representation. So it has advantages.
Just quickly, Solomon. So opponents of the PR system are saying the process itself is not accountable. In a sense, it takes away the power from the people. And in any democratic states, they have always said power belongs to the people.
In both systems, the people matter. In the majoritarian force past the post, even before Samuel, even before you go to meet your people, it has to be under a party ticket. So that party, and I give this analogy, you have to come first to the high priest of your party. Then they baptize you first, then lay their hand by you, then give them blessing, then you go. In the list system, people vote for parties, but you have candidates in those parties. So whether it's majoritarian or the list system, people matter, and political parties. So for people who would say, well, if you bring PR system, then people are not accountable, parliamentarians are not accountable. Whether it's majoritarian or list system, it is political parties. I mean, Samuel, in the majoritarian system, but when it's time for parliamentarians to vote in parliament, I mean, we all have those issues. Why do you have to listen to what your party is saying rather than voting in the national interest? Why is it that political parties force MPs to vote on party lines rather than voting in the interest of the people? So for these arguments, for me, it's neither here nor there.
All right. Lawyer Dumbuya, sorry. The issue Solomon has, the point Solomon has made, looking at why do we need PR system at this point, the legality of the process itself, and the submissions from the Ecowas Parliament. So it appears government is on a fine footing in getting the PR system implemented very well.
Are you really serious, Samuel?
I'm asking a question.
No, okay. Is it a tough question?
You can go ahead and answer the question.
Well, as I say, I can understand the position of my colleague Jamiru, but I think it is really difficult to defend the PR system at this point.
Why is that?
First, let me begin where he ended, that because South Africa, Switzerland, even Italy, you know, does it, and some other countries, so therefore it is also befitting for Sierra Leone. That's a wrong analogy. It's wrong because it is good for South Africa, it is good for Switzerland. You know, the political climate and atmosphere for South Africa, Switzerland, Italy, and other countries are completely different from that of Sierra Leone. And when you look at other countries, Sierra Leone is now embedded in the two-party system. No matter which kind of political system you bring into this country, it will either be APC or SLPP. Whether you develop a new political system apart from PR or the constitution, it will still be APC or SLPP. So I don't even want my colleague to go that it will cater for smaller other political parties. These political parties will not be able to gain anything. But let me say this: in those countries, let me say this: in those countries, if you look at the percentages, you know, in those countries, some of them are 0.1, some of them 1%. Here it's 11%. Apart from APC and SLPP, which other political party? Not even NGC is going to have 11.9%. So he must know that. So for me, it is not so much for other political. You see, if it was geared towards other political parties really fitting in, you will see the footprint. But it is not that. It is something completely different. And the PR system, as I say, it's not right for Sierra Leone. He said it all here, although I can see that he seems to be the perfect referee between me and Jamiru, because he's like diplomatic. he says something and he gets in the middle, he says something nice for Jamiu and something nice for me. And you begin to wonder, what can I do with this man? You know, he has appeased me. You know, but the PR system really, to be honest with you, he said it all. Let us say we want to consider it. We begin to consider it. Have we done enough civic education? Do the people really know what kind of system is this? How are they going to react? And it does not cater for, like you said, for the representation of the people in their constituencies. Say what you like. Well, again, that's why I say whether it's a PR system or the constituency system is still the same. If you are in another political party, you want to form a political party today, overnight, or you want to go and contest as an independent candidate, you can still go. If the people in that constituency believe, some members of parliament are independent, you know, they've been able to gather the support because their constituency, people in their constituency believe in them. So they decided not to vote APs, they decided not to vote SLPP, but they voted them. So this is the kind of system where the representation of the people is key. In a PR system, members of parliament are not responsible to anybody, they are responsible to the party. It is the party that gives them the ticket to be on the list. So they're not responsible to but in a constituency system, you see some form of development, even though it may not be that much, but you see some people going to, you know, build this kind of small bridge in the community because they want to be voted again, you know. But in that other system, they don't do this kind of thing. And also, let's get back to the Ecowas, the speakers in the Ecowas parliament. It would appear to me, and I say this, I'm a very straightforward person. It would appear that the Liberian delegation and the Nigerian delegation seems to know the Sierra Leone constitution more than Sierra Leoneans who went there, with the greatest respect. And as I say again, my colleague Mr. Jamiu is not looking at the 38. He wants to, I agree with him 100%. It's in the law, in the constitution. Section 30 makes provision for constituency, 38 makes provision for PR system. It's in the law. But when do we go to 38? You don't just jump to 38. That is my problem. The government cannot just jump to 38 without fulfilling 38A. It is when you cannot fulfill 38, that is when you go to 38A. For me, in this case, they did not fulfill 38. Because
and what are the criteria? The
criteria is that you cannot go to PR system. It is clear from 38 and 38A, if you read them, you know, collectively, you know, if you try to synchronize them, you will see that for 38, before you really consider a PR system, the life of the constituencies must have elapsed. And that is 7 years. If they've not yet elapsed, for goodness sake, where are you taking this PR system from to go to 38A? It is only when you cannot, when you've elapsed, 7 years has elapsed, that is when you go to PR system. And also, the PR system is not like a system that is going to be there forever. It is just a system where, if you implement that process, then the Electoral Commission is mandated again to go by 38, again because that's the primary legislation, to delimit the constituencies and make sure before the next elections, the constituencies are there. But the problem again, like the Liberian delegation said, and again, he said that according to the law, constituencies are still in existence. And that is true. It's not yet 7 years.
The Electoral Commission, Sierra Leone, I have had engagement with the Chief Electoral Commissioner on this. And his submission is that clearly they told party members, politicians, that they were going to delimit boundaries. But the timing of that delimitation is not favorable. So they had to put that on hold. Because if they had gone ahead with that, it means they would have either asked for an extension of the election dates, or they would not have been able to conduct the boundary delimitation. So there are no defined constituencies to return members of parliament in the 2023 multi-tier election. So for the commission and for government, these boundaries are not established for 2023.
Let me say this. I notice he argued that point, but that is not true. If you look at before 2001, before 2000, and let's say 2002, after 2002. Now, we had a PI system in 2002. But then, before 2002 to 2007, you had a series of delimitations of constituencies and all the rest of it, and then we went into the 2007 elections. And the elections of members of parliament were done in tandem with the delimitations of those constituencies. Now, coming to 2012, you will see that before 2012, also, there were no delimitations because the constitution said 7 years. So you cannot say because they were not able to delimit before 2012, therefore, when you get after 2012, before you get to the next election, then they will not. No, you don't say that. Because if you get into parliament now 2023, and the work is still going on, except the electoral commissioner is telling me that he noticed that he's not going to get a job after 2023. So he's not sure that he's going to do the job. He can still do the job between now to 2003 to 2004. By 2004, new delimitations have taken place for the next elections. But the constituency does not have a kind of lacuna. No. If the delimitations are there, that's why it says 7 years. You cannot go beyond that. You cannot bypass that. It is for very good reason. It's for very good reason that the drafters inserted that particular provision. So for me, I think it is not honest in the part of the electoral commissioner. With due respect to him, I think he ought to have listened to the constitution, adhere to the constitution, and conduct the 2023 June presidential, parliamentary, and other elections in tandem with the constitution on constituency basis, and then continue to do his work. Because he has 2 years from now to 2024, he could delimit constituencies. Then after 2024, then going to the next election, there are delimitation of constituencies. But it's really, sometimes it's difficult when you come, you see a constitutional provision and it's, my colleague was saying the constitution is not black and white. I disagree with him. It's black or white. It's black. It's either black or white. If you want it other way, you go and amend the constitution. The constitution is specific. You don't begin to say because it's this, I want to change it. I want to interpret it. No. If it says 7 years, it's 7 years. You don't find another way around it to say no because it has a 5 years minimum. No, the maximum is what you are looking for.
All right, let me bring in Abdul. You've listened to the two finalists and they've made their submission. So as it is right now, what should be the path that we should take for a better electionary year?
The good thing is that Mr. Doumbouya just said, let's say, we're going with the PR system. According to him, much civic education has not been done yet. And I also agree with him with that. I established that earlier on, that we need intensive public education, about the switch. Now we're switching. We switch 2002, before then we had enough time to educate people. And most of our voters for 2023, I mean, they never witnessed, some of them, never witnessed this switch, the PR system. And what they have witnessed, for the past several months, it's serious argument between politicians and some civil society also have joined these politicians, in defending or, disagreeing with one another. But what we need is to get the civil society organization that the society respects to actually engage the political class and the people about the importance of the PR system and the importance of the switching. Coming back to the law, Mr. Doumbouya is making emphasis on the 7-year more. But what he's not disagreeing with is the 5-year mandate Is it constitutional or unconstitutional? So because, for example, the ECSL, their best cushion for this argument, you know, is on the 5-year base, not on the 7-year base. And because the 5-year base sits within the law, not outside of the law. So these are the public education we need to engage our people with. Lawyers are human beings too. I mean, not all lawyers are good in statutory interpretation, definitely. And not all lawyers, respectfully in Sierra Leone, did constitutional administrative law as a module, you know, based on my research. You know, not like some of us, you know, who study outside of Sierra Leone. It's compulsory, you know, that you have to, you know, do constitutional administrative law. So lawyers who don't have that luxury, you know, to actually study that, they have a lot of challenging issues to actually talk about the interpretation of statutory instrument. So that being, we are human beings. If the government is concerned about the stability of this country, it's high time, you know, Jamil is here. They can, I mean, he will say they have their strategic communication. That's the government face. You need an independent platform that can convene, you know, a political class and citizens to actually have a dialogue. I mean, we are a country who believe in dialogue. And the very Ecowas Parliament, one of the fundamental principles they were established for is dialogue and get to a consensus, you know, point and make that recommendation to the heads of state council, and they will take the decision to the member state that this is what needs to be done via the representative of the community members. So locally, I believe, I mean, Mr. Doumbouya will listen to me. Mr. Jamiru will listen to me as well. So many other people, some will listen and some will not listen to me. But we have Sierra Leoneans who can actually get to the point. I repeat myself again, we don't need to take any citizen for granted ahead of 2023 election. We are all important and we are all key players.
Let me quickly bring in our viewers. Quickly, I would run to a lawyer, Dr. Freddie Lawson, who resides in the UK. And he is saying, I struggle to see the relevance of the ECOWAS Parliament and the whole ECOWAS structure itself. I don't think member countries take the deliberations of the Parliament seriously. The fact that some members abandon posts at the nick of time is itself a dereliction of duty. The quality of presentation by various countries was, in the majority of cases, very lackluster. It seemed some of the participants lacked the relevant knowledge of the topics they were addressing. With regards to the PR system, I have not been able to read a credible argument against it. Opponents should blame the drafters of the 1991 Constitution for lack of foresight. Additional qualifying clauses should have been added to Section 38A to bring clarity to its interpretation. Some of these sections and clauses conflict, and this adds further misunderstanding. There's a tendency for people to cite sections in isolation in the Constitution to justify their own beliefs and understanding. There are deficiencies in the Constitution. The relevant sections in the Constitution, including Section 38 and 38A and the Public Elections Act 2022, should be read together for better clarity and understanding. Eddie Grant is saying, but listen to the suggestions of the, okay, that's not what we're discussing right now. In Tanzania, honestly, with the PR system, comes 2023 general, there would be more inclusiveness in the governance system in the world of parliaments. Many, okay, Amara Alpha, your message is not too clear. The Grant is saying, what baffled me the most is that the PR system is not for a single political party. There's a provision for it in a 1991 constitution, and the president has the authority to enact it. So why all these feels about. Ibrahim Sharif is saying the PI system is used by more than 84 countries in the world, so it is democracy friendly. Barry Sanders, Barry, I'm not going to go through your message. Thank you, Mr. Fatoma, for saying it out. Most of the things in that report were not reflective of the interest of the people in the country's sad state of affairs. Ambassador Mike Joseph Kanu is saying that. Mola Warboy by camera is saying, Eddie, are you saying because state of emergency is in our constitution and the president has a sole right to invoke it, that means he has the right to invoke it at any time he pleases, or there needs to be a situation for that provision to be invoked? So many messages. Joseph Josiah is saying, I like the way the honorable from other countries show concerns about the political status in Salone, Liberia and other countries which are early warning signs. Ecowas has been encouraging a lot of wrongdoing in most member states until when military takeovers took place before they step in. I'm going to take at most 5 more messages. Ibrahim Jakema is saying, Lawyer Dumbuya, with all due respect, so the APC is not ready for it. Please don't generalize your statement. Thank God you are in Supreme Court now. Go and argue your case. But the PR system is constitutional and bound by the prerogative of the president. AYV is not a court of law. Wait for the Supreme Court to argue your case. The PR system is already here to stay. Indolo Givao is saying, PR system is part of the laws of Sierra Leone. Since Section 38A, the basis for PR system to be triggered is provided for in Section 38, subsection 3. I agree with the argument that the law had been strictly followed for PR system to be used as a system of election in 2023. Saidu Kabo is saying Samuel Chernobyl has sold out the lives of Sierra Leoneans. The parliamentarians from other countries were even curious as to whether the reports represented the reality on ground. What did Chernobyl went there for? He left his colleagues in Sierra Leone's parliament being okay. That's clear enough. No one born of a woman can stop. Okay. I'm going to see if another message does not encourage me to go through. I'll just end the messages there. Too many political ones here this evening. Samuel Wise, when Sierra Leoneans would love themselves and be the only country that they could boast of. Like other countries in Africa, example Tanzania, the people of Tanzania love themselves and the country. Though they are politically charged, there is no forest in Tanzania, but they are efficient in terms of food. Dollar is centralized and one cannot see water plastic on the street. So let the opposition allow President Bill to rehabilitate and reform both the country and the democracy. Interesting. So many messages. Unfortunately, time is never our best friend. So I would have to hold the messages there. And just quickly come to the panelists and ask for your parting shots and what's the reformatory way forward. I'll start off with you, Abdul.
Well, I still continue my appeal to the government and the political party that we should, form an engagement to educate our people, about the switch. The argument is both in court now, and also Parliament have already, passed the regulations, and so it's legal, and we await the decision from the Supreme Court. But then either way, we should also prepare the mind of citizens, about the PR system. So if we're going to switch, we should know what we are about to do as a nation. And like Mr. Dumbuya said, the PR is a temporary system. Both, according to the law, both systems are temporary because it also pleases His Excellency to direct, what system of elections we will go into based on, informations available to the Electoral Commissions. So until unless if we switch to PR system, we get back to Parliament and remove the constituency base and then we'll be thinking about a permanent, system. But it is now, I mean, we have two options. Anytime where we want to go, it's determined. But most of our voters for 2023 have no knowledge or have no idea when we were doing the PR system, both in 1996 and year 2002.
Yeah.
So now it's 2023. We're getting more argument for PR. So we want to educate our people on this.
Okay, Dumbuya.
Yes, I agree with his last words and what he has said, and also I want to say that I agree with some of the speakers in the Ecowas Parliament where they said, according to what they have noticed, that it seems there is some kind of political instability or in the democratic, institutions. I urge His Excellency the President, Madabio, to withdraw this PR system from the processes, because he owes that duty to the people of this country. Leaving it to continue will cause more instability, and we do not want to go into the 2023 elections with any kind of problems or any kind of instability. We urge him to do that. It's the right thing to do, because you cannot introduce an electoral system at the 11th hour to the elections, which is just 5 or 6 months to go. You cannot. There is no country in the world that can do that. I don't understand it, but I believe he's listening to me, or he has people who are listening to me. And my advice to him is not to listen to those people who want to create chaos in this country, for him to advise them to withdraw the system and to allow the process to flow. I mean, a second term for any president is what you have done. If the people want to vote him in, irrespective of whatever system he is going to be there, he was elected through the constituency system. So if he is going to be elected again, I mean, what is wrong with the constituency system? So let not begin to put a system that will create problems for the country. That is my advice to him. That is my advice to all of us who are seated here. And that is my advice to every citizen in this country, to be peaceful and also to go into the 2023 elections and vote peacefully.
Solomon?
So first, to thank those who've made their comments and contributed to the discourse. I think this is something that should be, like Abdul said, an ongoing process. Naturally, APC, SLPP are dominant political forces in Sierra Leone. And so by virtue of the strengths and longevity of both parties, we understand when, people hold fast to positions. But that should not necessarily define who we are. I think as Sierra Leoneans, we should always look at the national interest. And all of us, political parties, civil society, media, community stakeholders, religious institutions, we must all recommit to peace, to cohesion, to deepening democracy. And like Abdul said, well, sometimes, again, government officials may not be the best messengers. As you open Moses, they are a government man. So I think I agree with him, and we're all looking forward to civil society, media, convening a lot of these sessions, coming out as conveners. We've all been doing this throughout the history of Sierra Leone. And no electoral system is perfect. The majoritarian one past the post system that we have been used to also has its own advantages and pitfalls. The PR system itself is not a perfect system, but I think what we have to look at is what relevance it would bring to bear on the entire political climate, and we all must also recommit to ensuring that we are in the business of giving our people a better life. So I think this is ongoing, and because it's about elections, it is NEC that has the competence to do voter education, and I think NEC will also support all of us. I think political parties across the divide, civil society, media, stakeholders, all of us should now take ownership of this process and make sure our people are educated, and all of us recommit to strengthening our democracy.
All right, thank you very much. Solomon Jamiru, Sierra Leone's Deputy Minister of Information and Communications. Thank you very much. Lawyer Lansan Adumbuya from the Oppositional People's Congress Party. Thank you very much. Abdul Fatoma from the Campaign for Human Rights and Development International. We apologize for the absence of Ibrahim Tomi, Executive Director, Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, who could not make it because he has an emergency, according to him. Many thanks to all of you who've watched, visual who've listened, and who've sent in your messages on the AYV News Facebook page. Well, this is the end of AYV on Sunday for tonight. My name is Samuel Wise-Bangra. Up next is our AYV Primetime News. Until next week here, when we meet again, take care of yourself and have a lovely night.